Sean, thanks so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Life podcast. How are you, sir?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Sam.
No problem. Thanks for coming on. Very, very quick, wasn't it? Actually, you phoned me up last week. I was sat in my Tesla, taking it out for a spin.
So I hear, yeah, the luxuries of a Tesla. So it's we've been connected on LinkedIn, obviously the infamous social media where everybody knows everybody, but knows little of each other for quite a while, haven't we? So good to finally speak over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Sean, you called me up to talk to me specifically about a new project that you were involved in called The Foundation. It's been running for a little bit of time now. You've been part of the setup of that. You're the secretary there amongst some other founders. But the idea is that the foundation has been set up to be able to support and help the next generation of financial planners local to you in Dorset and Hampshire way. Is that right?
Yeah, Dorset and Hampshire. Yeah, correct. So as mentioned, for probably want of a better title, I am the secretary of the of the group. So the foundation, we have a committee, formal committee, as you would imagine, and it's as you mentioned, in the simplest form, it's targeted to be a non-profit networking for younger and newer advisors into the sector. So you can probably spot the diplomatic caveat there, saying younger and less experienced. Previously, we were the under 35s, but I'm fast approaching 35, so that wasn't the reason why we changed it. But we didn't want to exclude anybody, and we have newer members that are over 35 that are testament to that as well. But predominantly, that support to that type of demographic.
Sure, I think the absolutely wise thing to do there is change the age, because only this year I've helped around 5 guys and girls that have come from other professions. Mm-hmm. So what you're seeing is a lot of new advisors coming in that are like second careerists.
Definitely, yeah. And I've over the years, whether it's in a professional capacity or people that I know personally outside of out of work, there are a lot of skill sets that can lend themselves to the advice sector. It's not an easy job, but there are many skill sets, whether it's from time management, personal management, managing and delegating, or down to, for want of a better term, sales and pitches. So I think we mentioned you mentioned the word insular previously. So it can be an industry that seems quite difficult to break into, and perhaps it is if you don't have the right support and the right people behind you. So changing that to a little bit more of a wider demographic to encompass those is something that we've actively done, and for that reason that you mentioned there, but also not to exclude anyone, including myself when I hit 35 next year. Definitely wise.
Okay, so let's just elaborate a little bit, Sean, around what the foundation is and what you've done so far. So just give us an overview of what the foundation is and who it's for.
Definitely. So probably the easiest way to explain this is to go back. I've been with the foundation for a number of years now, and I jumped on the bandwagon on I believe the second or the third event, and it's really progressed very organically. So originally it was designed to be a bit of a get together for, as I mentioned, we'll keep using the word younger, but for not the truest term, but a bit of a get together for younger individuals in the sector, which I believe didn't really exist, whether in a formal capacity or in a less formal capacity either. And from there, it's progressed, as I say, snowballed into something really positive. And like I mentioned, it's got to a point where we do have a committee. We have votes, we have meetings and minutes and agendas, etc. And that's giving the group some structure. But fundamentally, that original very, very informal get together was aimed at that audience where we're very aware in the industry that over the last 2 or 3 decades, it's been massively saturated by an older generation. And that's not in any derogatory sense to anybody that's older in the industry. It's just a natural progression how it's gone. And a big impact of that is probably in the years just probably around RDR when that came in. Really, I think a lot of people were excluded from the sector. Is a lot more difficult to get into, and where we're at now is the average age of a financial advisor in the UK is 55. So naturally, if you're in your 20s or even younger, we've had people within the foundation younger than that. It's easy to feel alone, I think is a really, really good way to describe it, when you're surrounded by nobody that's in the same position as you. And that can be scary, whether it's a new job to you or not, or a new sector to you or not. So that support organically came from that group, and we developed that to not only have that peer group, but also develop technical skills and softer skills and knowledge, all with the ethos of none of us, whether it's the organisers or the committee helping organise, none of us are there for any personal gain or any personal profit, and it really is there a group to help people in the local area and support the industry. We're all fortunate that we share the same passion around the industry, and that's really relevant when we get together. And hopefully, new members that listen to this will see that when they do come along.
Sean, so how long have you been a financial planner for?
So I have been, wow, that's a good question. So I've been in the advice sector for around about 10 years. Originally, I was very restricted in advising around protection only, and that developed into pensions and investments. And I'm very, very proud of using the word holistic every chance I can get now in my financial planning description. So I've been in the more conventional holistic financial planning space for probably about 5 or 6 years now, specializing in more pensions investments.
Okay, great stuff. So you started in a protection role, did you?
Yeah. I mean, going back before that, I was working in a general insurance role, very heavily sales based, as a lot of those roles can be. So general insurance, like home insurance, car insurance, and there's incredible skills you learn from that type of industry, and it's which can be hard graft, but also quite rewarding. And then there's great professions in that sector, and there's really clear paths to progression, which is great. And I was very, very fortunate. Got asked by someone I used to work with to help them out with a new company. Going into the advice sector, and the rest is history. Worked out really, very well, and it's been a natural progression ever since.
I think working within insurance, where tends to be quite target driven, quite sales focused, that ability to kind of build that quick rapport with a client. Obviously, it's very price heavy, isn't it? People tend to want a good deal, or they'll go elsewhere. That's why Compare the Market and all that sort of stuff came out.
Yeah.
But it's a great training ground, isn't it, I suppose, for learning about that sort of, to start to get a good understanding of needs-based selling, trying to sort of understand what the client's worries, fears, concerns might be if their car was to break down, or if they were stuck in another country with their car, or if someone was to break into their home and cause them trauma, or they got support in place to be able to cover them for that, or any legal costs, etc., etc.
Exactly.
So I think I found that I worked for Cornhill Insurance for like 3 years on the outbound side, selling car and home insurance and travel insurance.
Okay.
So it was a really, really good ground, and a really good training and good experience, really, to get stuck into. So you transitioned from that into protection based with this firm, then, did you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and as you mentioned there, a lot of transferable skills, and that using some cliche terminology here, but matching needs really, and that's a really good basis. And as you mentioned, that rapport, and also coming from a simpler background of GI, you still have that heavy compliance aspect, and that runs right the way through to whatever industry you're in, whether it's through to mortgages or investments, equity release, pensions, insurance, business protection. It's those real basics are a great foreground, and if you can do those well, there's a lot of people that can't. So if you can do that well, I won't say the rest of it's easy, because the technical knowledge is not easy, as we know, but it can fall into place. You can really use that to prop up the rest of your skills.
Knowing what you know now, because obviously you know you've been working as a financial planner for quite a few years. You're now at WH Ireland, you know, delivering holistic financial planning to high net worth clients.
Indeed, yes.
Yeah. So knowing what you know now, looking back, do you think moving, you know, if you were to turn around to somebody who was a bit younger and they were saying to you, Sean, I really want to become a financial planner, would you give advice to them and say, look, why don't you go and cut your teeth in the protection world first?
Yeah, I would say that the huge benefit, particularly for the generation we find ourselves in now, is the most common route, which I'm sure from your profession I'm sure you'll concur, is through an admin-based role and learning probably the more technical side of things, and that's fantastic. So a lot of professionals that come into the sector as younger advisors have a real good knowledge there. What I've found that it is lacking there is the communication skills, is the ability to, you know, basics, build rapport, probing, fact finding, those. And where we find ourselves is, where do you learn that? Because there's not enough advisors to sit down and teach you that. And if you're with a firm that can do that, then that's rare, you know. So that's a really, really strong attribute to that firm if you can do that. So that worked for me. However, whether it works for everybody, probably not. It's great to say, like you say, cut your teeth. And so some real examples, you know, I've had younger administration roles, individuals that I've worked with, and it's even been to the point where I think the generation, I'm probably borderline on that younger generation, I'd say, where we're very much burdened with texts and WhatsApp and Instagram and social media, and how often do you actually pick up the phone to speak to somebody, and how often do you have a conversation? So me being borderline on that, there's the generation kind of 10, 15 younger than me and upwards, where they almost never use a telephone.
Nope.
So I've physically had to train people how to pick up a telephone, and it's been absolutely daunting for them. And you know, it's, where else do you learn that than jumping in the deep end to do it? So it's invaluable experience. And yeah, you know, you could probably say that could be learned in many different sectors, but I'd say I'm very fortunate in the roles that I've had that were a great foreground when I was, you know, 18, 19 to build from there. And naturally, as you know, from your outbound environment that you had there, you get some really, you know, top professionals that can impart a lot of wisdom to you, and from a managerial sense and an individual and a sales sense, etc.
Some of the most successful financial planners that I've ever spoken to, and I'm talking about some of the older generation here, are from a sales background, when the role of itself of a financial advisor was very sales focused pre-RDR. These were ex-salespeople. They were selling things, you know, and
exactly.
And that was their background. So they knew how to build that rapport. They knew how to pick that telephone up. They knew how to do needs-based selling. They were used to knocking on doors literally to go and sell life assurance or some sort of savings pension product. And I think it's a skill set that definitely is lacking in the next generation of financial planners that come through. And I think companies need to be very careful about how they develop and grow their teams purely through this administrative route. If there isn't clearly a defined training program around the softer skills, then you're just going to have a lot of people qualified with absolutely no people skills. And I think it's massively important that people go off and do some tough jobs, you know, like dare I say it, like hypothetically knock on doors, you know, learn how to communicate with people, customer service roles. I think people kind of think, well, I'm going to go straight out of university and jump straight into a financial planning position. And that can be done, but why not go off and get some skills like, I know, recruitment, for example, is a great one. You know, you have to kind of be picking up the telephone, speaking to people, constantly looking to understand the needs of a company, where you can sell the benefits of a candidate in and why they need to use your services, just to kind of give you a bit of a reality check that not every piece of business lands on your lap.
And you can end up being very entitled by being around successful advisors, and you know, as I mentioned to you before, that they may have built their book up over 30 years, and that can seem quite easy, when you're established, it can look easy, like the old, I'll use that old cliche of, a duck looking nice and calm above, but you're not seeing that work that's been put in to get there. So you can almost, through no fault of your own as a younger individual, almost feel a little bit entitled to say, yeah, I'm in this sector. Where's my book of 100 million that I'm here to manage? Yeah.
People phone me up, Sean, and they say, Sam, I'm looking to become a financial planner. What I'm looking for is a job where I can kind of go in there and hopefully they've got a book of clients that I can start to work with. I'm looking for about a 50K basic. You're just like, yeah, let me just pull one of those out my arse for you.
Yeah. They are out there.
Yeah, they are, but they're few and far between. They are few and far between. And, if someone's got 2 or 3 years worth of financial planning experience, it tends to go to those guys.
Yeah. And so where that leaves us is, 20, 30 years ago, I think probably more 30 years ago, that the stats are more accurate, there was roughly 300,000 advisors in the UK, and that would be encompassing banks, independent advisors, tied advisors, etc. And now, the last time I checked, there was just under 35,000, and they're not coming into the industry the same rate that they're leaving the industry. So I would, at an educated guess, I'd probably say mid 30,000s. So when you look at that, and there's more wealth in the UK, and you think, well, that should be an easy fix. But the problem is how do you break into that industry, because of, and rightly so, the great thing, as we mentioned, is I'm sure there's people that'll listen to this, and as you mentioned, the older mentality of some advisors from that more salesy background 30 years ago. I've heard dozens and dozens of times of that referred to as the good old days. So I won't read into what that means, but rightly so. I think the industry is far more heavily regulated now, and that's reflected in the qualifications and the criteria that you need to meet. And what that means is it's pushed a lot of people out of the industry, similar to recent changes in DB schemes. Just having that increased tightened rulings and legislation and necessary qualifications, it pushes a lot of people out of the industry. So it's great to protect the clients, but it proposes a very difficult option if you want to break into that, because you need the ability to communicate well with clients, you need the ability to build up a lot of trust with clients, and they need to know that you're going to be able to do a good job, basically. And then coupled with that, you need a huge knowledge of technical qualifications as well, whether that's just what you've got on paper from your diploma or whatever route you come into it, but also the things that you don't have to know, but you really need to. So there's
first, isn't it? Should I go down the administrative to power planner route and then become a financial planner, and then at that point learn my soft skills on the job? Should I dive straight into financial planning because I've got really great soft skills and I've worked in sales or account management or consultancy for 10 years, and I'll learn the technical stuff on the job? So it's kind of what comes first, isn't it? And I think the route of admin, power planner, financial planner does lend itself to the a younger person, because it's kind of like it's a natural progressive route up. And by the time you've kind of, I don't know, matured a bit, not to say that somebody who's 21 straight out of uni isn't mature, but I remember what I was like at 21. I was not the same as I am now. I think, if you've got, say, 2 or 3 years of working within an admin to power planner type position, and then you step into a financial planner role around 26, 27, I think that's quite a nice route. And if you look at other professions such as legal and accountancy, that's exactly what they do. It's just that the financial planning profession has never had a route, is it? We're finding our way with it at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where we find ourselves, and that's where the foundation really has provided that support for individuals if you're very, very early into the sector or not. And when you look at the alternatives to that, it's very much either you've got to pay a lot of money to be in something that's labelled young and has the words financial in you have to fork out either a hefty monthly membership or an annual membership. And I'll use a polarizing couple of words here, but SJP and Quilter have set up their version of what they refer to as the schools. And really, like I said, it is polarizing. I'm sure people have their views on whether it's right or wrong, but they're really the only firms that are bringing the opportunity for people to come into the sector. And what that poses is a potential monopoly, So they're bringing in the people that have had the foresight to see, okay, well, we need to bring in younger advisors, and then also buying up, retiring firms. And it's, like I said, it's not going to be far from monopoly in 10 years. So there has to be a bit of publication around how to get people into the sector. There has to be a bit of publication of, okay, well, who do you speak to if you're struggling in the sector? And there has to be that publication of, okay, well, who else do you know in the sector, and what's your experience been? And like I said, having a great diverse group that I'm a member of here, and that I'm proud to be able to rely on, whether it's our WhatsApp group or physical meetings or Zoom meetings. It's great just to have a sense check and say, oh, okay, yeah, great. There is someone else in that position.
Let's talk about the finance. Let's talk about the foundation then, okay? Mm-hmm. Because you've obviously gone through your career. Did you find that? Do you think that you would have progressed a bit quicker in your career, or maybe not procrastinated or dwelled upon certain situations as long if there was something like the foundation where you could have gone in and banked some of your thoughts, feelings, fears, ideas around?
Definitely, yeah. So we have some examples of that are just having your ear close to the ground. So whether that's opportunities, and that's not really what it's set up for. It's not set up, for work opportunities, but that naturally comes from there. But just as an example, secondly, we have a head of technical coordination. So we have somebody there that is very, very experienced in pretty much all the qualifications the CII has to offer. So if you need someone to say, okay, well, I'm finding this really hard. You might have a manager at work that's also experienced, but it's difficult to say, okay, I'm struggling here. How do I get through RO2, or what's this alternative route? This doesn't quite fit the way I learn. Okay, well, there's this firm that can offer some alternatives. This is what I've used. Okay, let me put you in touch with XYZ over here. He had a similar experience. Oh, okay, great. That works for me. Thanks for that technique. Thanks for that offering. So yeah, there's been times that whether it's just me as an individual where I do try to get everything done myself and maybe struggle to ask for help, and maybe it's an element of that as well. But definitely I didn't have anybody I knew in that sector when I was coming through, bar very, very successful individuals in the city, and people that didn't really have the time to talk to me about techniques for getting through RO6 and things like that.
Did you often think when you were in those situations where you were surrounded by people that were quite successful, where perhaps they didn't have a great deal of time to help support you in your early stage of your career? Did you ever get to a stage where you thought, am I in the right job here? Am I as good as these guys? Did you have that feeling of imposter syndrome at all?
Yeah, in ways, for sure. It's something I'm still susceptible to, imposter syndrome, and I think it's one of the great things that comes out from, I guess that does come under mental health, and it's one of those great things that comes out where we're all able to talk a little bit more about these types of things. So yeah, it's then and now I do suffer from that, and like I said, having that slightly younger face sometimes. You're sitting in front of a new client you don't know that has a £10 million portfolio, if you're lucky enough, as an example, to get in front of someone like that, and they've had a successful career in FTSE 100 companies, and you think, well, what are they going to think of me? And once you talk for 5 minutes and you realize you know what you're talking about, you've done that hard work over the years, you're absolutely solid in your advice, and that's what matters. All of a sudden, everything goes out the window. But yeah, in the professional sense, certainly, I still get that, and that's just because I think of that conventional, having that demographic that does exist in the advice sector, but more personally, away from maybe clients and just the obvious professional side. Yeah, imposter syndrome is definitely something I get, whether it's work or not. And I've been lucky where I do have individuals I've worked with over the years, and have got fantastic careers now in top companies in the UK, and they've given me great advice that sticks with me, and just being able to celebrate your success is a huge part of that. And I think in the right way, you don't want to be too cocky, but having that ability just to, in this job, I was talking to someone recently where, I think there's very few industries where we have the pressure of that ongoing studying, that CPD, that technical knowledge, that keeping up with our client book, getting new business, and then having family issues, or whether it's relationships or friends or a global pandemic. And there doesn't seem much time to stop and think, oh, okay, 5 years ago would have been blown away where I am 5 years down the line. So it's really difficult in this job to stop sometimes, I think, and get that. But yeah, like I said, I'm fortunate enough to have people I'm in contact with from lots of different occupations that can impart that wisdom on me, shall we say. So yeah.
Well, that's really important, I think. And that's a great sort of example, I guess, of how the foundation works, Sean. And the fact that you're in there and you're able to express honestly about what you've experienced over 5 years, what you still go through now. And I think we all go through this imposter syndrome anyway, in all walks of life. And we can sometimes make ourselves feel a bit less than, especially with things like social media, and we log in and we see people absolutely kicking ass on social media. So they must be kicking ass in life. And you could feel absolutely great and then go on social and all of a sudden feel terrible. We start to compare and despair, don't we? And all these types of things. And I think having a support network where people can be open and honest and talk about how they're feeling and what they're worried about and what their concerns are, and also other people sharing it from an honest perspective of their journey and what they've gone through, allows people to kind of lower their expectations, really, of what they should be in the eyes of what they think others are thinking of them. And I think that's hugely important to your well-being, but also just, and again, important to others within the profession, that look, we all start somewhere. We don't know it all. Every day is a learning day, and you'll continue to learn as you go through. But I promise you, over the next couple of years, you'll look back and go, wow, I picked up a huge amount of knowledge. And is that something that you guys offer? Is that support and camaraderie and community?
100%. Yeah. It's every single time I've gone to one of our events, it's quite easy to talk about it now and say, this is great, I really enjoy it. But look, first event, knew no one there. Turning up, it's that typical, oh my gosh, I've got to go into a room full of people and talk to them. That not for everybody, but I'd say for a lot of us, that's quite daunting. So even that in itself, and even now, or obviously not now because we're on Zoom and until the next month or so, but even recent events after I've been with the group for a few years, sometimes I think, oh gosh, I had a super busy 10-hour day today. I've driven back from London to Dorset, or I've been up and down with several meetings today. I think, gosh, I don't know if I can muster up the energy for this. And every single time, without fail, every single time I come out and I think, God, I'm so glad I just went through and went to that event, because I feel great about speaking to somebody else who didn't have any meetings this week, and they wish they had had a busy day, or someone else that had 10 times a busier week than I did, and and then or if just having a bit of a laugh with somebody else, and which can be difficult in itself sometimes to find the time to do so. And so if you label it up as a financial event, great, you can get it in your diary a bit easier sometimes. But yeah, without fail, every single time I come away either thinking, great, I'm so glad I went to that event, or I'm so glad I logged on because I've learned something, or I feel better about what I've done, or I feel more confident in myself, or, you know, just the act of going through that motion and going through with it is just, you know, giving a positive end to the day.
I'm a massive fan of community, you know, like meeting up with people, especially, you know, any kind of sort of area where you might be struggling in life, is try and connect with a community of people that are feeling the same way. And pretty much for that reason you just said there, because it gives you perspective.
Yeah.
You know, when you rock up to a meeting and you're not feeling like it, 9 times out of 10, I always come out feeling a million times better.
You do.
It's those, it's that kind of commitment also to a group. That you might not be feeling great that day, therefore go listen, then you might gain something, or you might feel brilliant that day. You go in and hopefully you can share something that might inspire somebody else who's not having a fantastic day. But more often than not, even when you think you're having a brilliant day, you go in there and you're like, wow, I'm still learning. I'm still learning from other people. So it just always gives you that perspective. And, you know, it's hugely important. It also helps you keep the ego in check, I think, you know, that keeps you grounded. It keeps you helpful and keeps you grateful, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think perspective is huge. As you mentioned there, it's a really important word for when you're a busy professional, and having that physical interaction, or, you know, or virtual interaction, because like you said, scrolling through social media, I'm an absolute addict for Instagram and things like that. So I have to tell myself, limit myself, you know, and it's got its positives, and it's great for, you know, several things, but for everything it's great for.
Let's talk about that though, because I don't think you're the only one that, you know, has an addiction to social media. When it becomes such second nature to, you know, people who are like 20 years old now, for example, right, coming into the profession, I mean, they've only ever known social media, you know.
I mean, I'm sure addiction's a bit of a strong word for
I don't think so. I don't think it is a strong word.
No, maybe it's not for some. No, but it's I think it's that it comes down to just a release mentally. So the all-encompassing word addiction, you know, so whether it's just something that takes your mind off what you're doing briefly, you know, you have maybe a super heavy Zoom, and then, you know, then you write up your notes from your Zoom and you think, gosh, I just need a minute, whether that's grabbing a cup of coffee, or, you know, I'm sure there's people out there that maybe even worse, have a cigarette, or you know, or you know, someone that might just have a quick scroll through Instagram. My go-to is probably coffee. There, I could probably cut down on coffee. That's my quick. I'll have a quick breather, quick cup of coffee in there. But it's that mental. Say again.
So coffee's the devil for me. Like if I don't drink too much caffeine, but if I start on it, then I just want it all the time, and it becomes like a kind of terrible dependent habit that I get stuck into. Before I know it, I'm like, oh, drinking coffee again. It's horrible.
Oh gosh, I went roughly a year without drinking coffee about 3 or 4 years ago, and felt great, and fell back into the trap. And feeling that. But it's just that's small release, isn't it? Sometimes, and I think unfortunately, if that release is social media, it gives you a bit of a fake reality. So
I suppose again, if you can put it into perspective and see what it is, and it's not reality.
Exactly.
You know, it can be quite a beneficial thing, but then obviously understand as well that it can also have a negative effect on your mood. You know,
can do.
So let's say, for example, a couple of younger guys now and girls within the financial planning profession in Dorset and Hampshire were interested in learning more about the foundation. What could they do, Sean?
So the quickest route is we've got a LinkedIn page, which is great, and we've just got some funding from a local firm who have been really supportive of our cause. As I said, because we are completely non-profit, you'd have to pay to turn up or anything of that nature. So we're just launching our website, which is in the works. It would have been great if it was ready to go right now, but I'm sure by the time maybe this goes out, you can kindly add the website into the description there. So either LinkedIn or the website, or contact me directly. As I say, I'm visible on LinkedIn, and we can add you in and give you some information. But you know, it's we've got a discussion on LinkedIn, which is handy. So sometimes it's just, you know, oh, gosh, I've got this question. So what we've found is predominantly the group is focused on Dorset and Hampshire, but over the last year, I think we've all found ourselves with the wonders of, of Zoom and other video-based communications. That's naturally expanded. We've had people join from up and down the country, just because there's that less of a restriction. So we may continue that, but it'd be great if it's a model that we could have other people, inquire into and set up their own groups over the country. We have some unofficial support from the CII, and like I said, local companies, whether it's investment companies or local firms, and that brings it's a good reflection of, again, some positive firms out there that want to do positive things without any particular financial kickback, which is really difficult to see in this space sometimes. So it's lovely to see that.
Just before we wrap this up, just giving an overview of what someone can expect from being a member of the foundation. Then you mentioned, you predominantly like to do things on a face-to-face basis. So what goes down at these meetings? What should they expect, and how often are they?
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is, if anyone wants to get involved, there's no commitment. So there's no fees. You don't have to be a member and tying yourself up. If you want to come once, then great. But the format, as I say, pre-pandemic, the format has been normally a very, very nice location, whether it be a hotel or somewhere suitable, and we generally have that in person. And we switch between Dorset and Hampshire to accommodate the overlapping area that finds itself being. So normally, like I said, that turning up, and if you don't know anyone there, it is just seeing some friendly faces and shaking some hands. Well, I don't know if we're allowed to shake hands yet, but verbally shaking hands, shall we say. And just a bit of a networking, if you will, a bit of a meet and greet, a bit of a speaking to people in your sector. You can talk about work, you can talk about yourself, you can talk about anything you want, and it's a really, really friendly, welcoming atmosphere. The events themselves normally will have an element of a technical side to it, which is great. So that could be from a fund house, that could be from a DFM. As you mentioned, I work for a large DFM, WH Island, just for example. It could be a local solicitors or law firm, that type of thing. And there'll be a technical element to it, which is great. So you've got something tangible that you can definitely take away. However, I think in this sector, we get a lot of that. So as worthwhile as that is, we do try to generate some softer skills as well. So as I mentioned, time management has been one that we talked about before. A really, really useful event that's stuck in a lot of people's mind is tips from a successful individual in the investment sector, talking about being a younger individual and progression in your career, whether it's interview tips, whether it's asking the right questions to progress your career, that type of thing. Who doesn't take something away from something like that? So that double edge works really, really well. Sometimes naturally it's a little bit more laden with the technical, sometimes it's a little bit more the softer facts, but either way you'll definitely come away with something that you can either write down for your own development, or just keep in the back of your mind. Normally it's food and a degree of drink is catered for as well, which is obviously limited, but not normally, within the strict rules that we find ourselves in these days. And but as I say, so it's that networking base, so we have limitations on that. And finally, normally at that point, everyone's at ease. Everyone's read the room for an hour or so. Everyone's had the information they need to take away, and it's a bit of a breakout from there. And it's normally of an evening, I should have mentioned. So it's normally the third Thursday.
And obviously, people get to meet some new friends and build a bit of a community within the local area of people in the same position as them.
This is exactly it, yeah. So as I mentioned, obviously being part of the committee there, we've got a strong group, whether it's via WhatsApp or we have regular catch-ups on Zoom, and And yeah, I guess a really good example of that is we got together informally in the first lockdown, and it was okay, wow, this just happened. What are you guys doing? You know, and it's that cross company that there's no barriers there. You don't have to be, you know, whether if you're a one-man band, you don't have to be ashamed to say, okay, look, you know, it'd be really cool to know how you guys are coping technically, or, you know, mentally, or, you know, or with workload, that type of thing. So that's just a real life example of how that worked. No one's got any, there's no famine mentality of thinking, you know, I'm not going to help you because you're a rival company, or I'm not going to help you because, you know, you work in a similar postcode to me. It doesn't exist. It's just that synergy. You know, we probably draw the line at anything to do with clients physically, but you know, generally speaking, quite generic.
I like it. It's great. I think the more of these things that are popping up around the country and the more support that's being given, it gives people the confidence that are going into the role and being like, oh my God, what have I got into? What am I going to be doing? Also, there's a lot of smaller companies out there where perhaps someone young is going into a business where the average age within that business might be around 50 years old. You know, it's not unusual for someone to be in their 20s as an administrator, surrounded by a lot of older gentlemen as well. Like, you know, if it's a girl, for example, you know, going into that environment, you know, this type of group where it's a bit younger, people going through the similar sorts of experiences, it's just only going to be beneficial to someone's mental health, well-being, and their career development. So the more we see this, you know, the better it is. And you know, that's the reason why I set up the Financial Planner Life podcast as well, was to give an insight into the profession from people within it, not just the top billers and the top financial advisors. I wanted the everyday people that are in there trying to make a difference, showing those different types of personalities, how they go, how they do things, how they don't do things, the ups, the downs they've experienced. Because, you know, authenticity and the real side of it, I think, is really, really important. Not just, oh yeah, I can earn a load of money as a financial planner.
That's exactly it, yeah. And it's I think it's great to see that there's, once you cast that net, and you do find that there's other people with the same mentality. There's people that want the profession to keep going, and if there isn't people doing what we're doing, or some of the local companies that support us in you know, trying to get people into the sector, or just support people with financial education in the generalistic sense, then it will unfortunately die off or be monopolized by a couple of you know, large firms, unfortunately. So it's great to keep that variety going, great to keep the younger people and the new, less experienced people into the sector. So yeah.
Well, Sean, great. You know, your website's going to be off the ground soon. What we'll do is we'll make sure that we attach that to the YouTube video and to the podcast episodes that appear on Apple and Spotify, and they always get downloads, they always get listens on a weekly basis. So fingers crossed, you might get a few people that will come direct. And obviously we'll share a nice social media post as well, and with your name on it, and then people can come directly to you. But you're building the website, which means you're probably then going to focus on some branding, which means you're probably then going to focus on some social media stuff. So I think it's going to grow organically and naturally anyway, isn't it? And I think over time it's going to be out there. And you know, you've asked me to be a part of it as well, and you know, I'm up for that, keen to come along and help and contribute in any way that I possibly can. And I suspect throughout the years or months, whatnot, there probably will be some crossovers between us that we can help each other with. Absolutely. So I'm very much interested in getting involved in anything like that.
Yeah, we look forward to it. Yeah, and then as you mentioned, anybody who wants to get in contact, whether they want to support or just be involved, it's door is always open for a conversation.
For sponsors, etc. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
Top man, brilliant. Sean, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate you sharing your journey and sharing the foundation. Thank you.
Likewise, thanks for having me. Have a good rest of your day.
And you, buddy.